terms of their negotiations in terms of labor contracts, one. Number two is I've been trying to get an amendment that would say that in negotiations with labor you have to consider the financial health of the Postal Service. Well, right now the law is such that you cannot consider the financial health in arbitration of the Postal Service when an arbitrator's arbitrating labor contracts. So it doesn't matter if it's losing money, that it's not included, which is absolutely crazy. We have a great new Postmaster General. They have tremendous plans to get it right, but they have to have the ability to control their labor costs. And that's 85–90% of everything that they do. And if you can't control that, you can't ever get profitable. So one of the things it has to do is we have to change the law that says, you know, the financial condition of the post office ought to have some bearing in terms of negotiation for labor and working rules.
Let's go to Hopewell Junction, New York. Mark, an independent, go ahead.
Good morning, Senator.
Good morning.
You mentioned every American should read the report. I say every American should read the Constitution. That the 1/3 of the government agencies that you have there, probably 95% of them are unconstitutional. And all through the government, you have 550 agencies approximately, and most of those are unconstitutional. Why don't you just every week take 2 or 3 of those agencies, put them up, show the constitutionality of it. If it's unconstitutional, get rid of it. Then you'll get rid of the problem of the overspending.
Senator.
That's a great point. It's a point I make all the time. Is this a role of the federal government that's authorized in the Constitution? Matter of fact, John McCain and I send a letter every year to every other senator, and we have 6 or 7 others that have joined us this year, saying we will block bills that you cannot point to the authority in the Constitution for which you're doing it, if it's increasing spending without decreasing spending somewhere else. But his point, one of the reasons we're in trouble, and he's dead on with his point, is the federal governments have tried to do things that our founders never intended them to do. And so we have this massively large sets of bureaucracy that are unwilling. I mean, his point is well made when the GAO tells me they can't tell us every government program. You know, right there's a problem. The size and magnitude is no one person can get their hand on. And that's what we're trying to do through these reports. We'll get 2 more reports over the next 2 years that'll give us the rest of it. And then every year after that, the GAO will give us a report on everything every year. And it's a massive job. But back to his key point, if in fact it's a legitimate role for the federal government, we ought to do it. If it's not, then we shouldn't. I've tried to get a bill through called the Enumerated Powers Act so that you can have a point of order on any bill that does not fall within the enumerated powers of the Constitution. I have not been successful in doing that. And so, you know, what he would like to see us do, I'd love to try to do, but I can't get the support to do it.
Are you concerned at all, though, that when you just start cutting across the board, like some have said, Democrats in particular are critical of the House Republicans' continuing resolution that includes about $61 billion in spending cuts? Look at that and they say they're just slashing. They're not looking at programs and the validity of them.
What you have to do is put it in context. The size of the federal government's twice the size it was 10 years ago. We're double. In the last 2 years, it's increased 24% in discretionary programs. 24%. What the House is doing doesn't even take you back anywhere close to what we were 2 years ago in terms of expenditures. So when they say this is a slash, what is 24% in a period of 0 inflation, and we're going to cut half of that out? Half of that increase out. We're not going to cut that out. That's ridiculous. The claim, and that's why we're where we are. You know, we can create social safety nets that are within the frame of the Constitution and make sure we're taking care of those that truly need our help. Then we have to relook at everything else in this country if we're to survive. And, you know, once the international financial community loses confidence on whether or not we will be able to repay our debt, our interest rates are going to shoot up like crazy. And the economic growth, right now, our debt is costing us 1 million new jobs a year. That's been confirmed by several economic studies. It's cost us at least 1% in GDP. So, well, if you could get 1% increase in GDP, you could increase 1 million jobs a year, which would markedly increase the revenue of the federal government. So if we don't get past this curve, what's going to happen is the interest costs are going to rise so fast that there's not going to be a way to get out of it. And that's why it's so critical. You know, people can say slash and burn, but it's not. I mean, you know, it's most of the stuff that what this report shows you could eliminate. Nobody will never know the difference and still probably help people much better than what we're doing today.
On this issue of debt and interest rates, though, some economists like Joe Stiglitz of Columbia University have said that with consumers weakened by high debt and unemployment, government needs to step in with a large new stimulus effort. And he says, secondly, he says a more effective government of relief for borrowers at risk of foreclosure would help to put consumer spending back on track. He says this argument over our debt and our deficits is not valid because if you look, people are more than happy to be giving us money. That they're not.
Right now they are. And why is that? Because we're still the largest GDP in the world, but we're still the safest country in the world. But when countries start to default, like Ireland, like Greece, like Japan, and they will, they'll have sovereign defaults, money will rush in here for a couple of years. And as soon as those defaults are over, the money's going to rush back out and interest rates are going to peak. Look, the Congress, I voted against the tax extender bill package at the end of, in the lame duck because none of the new spending was paid for by reducing. We just put another $1 trillion in stimulus into the economy. We don't need to put any more stimulus into the economy. What we need to do is have a more efficient government that takes less of the economy to run the government. The government doesn't produce anything. We need those dollars to go into productive capacity that will actually grow jobs and grow the economy rather than into government programs.
Trevor is a Republican in Mankato, Minnesota. You're on the air.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Cold up there?
Yeah. Yeah, the fact, yeah, it's cold. The fact is, you know, we have a $14 trillion debt, but let me argue why I think that might be a good thing. All right, let's imagine the United States without a debt. Let's say we have a surplus of money. The thing with that is, I fear the government just isn't going to sit on a pile of cash. If they have a surplus of money, they're just going to grow and take more of our civil liberties. And so the fact that we're in debt, it's making government shrink, and I think that's a good thing.
Senator?
Well, this is going to be a tough way to shrink the government. You know, the real danger is that, and going back to the Gang of Six, we have a short window with which we can make decisions and control our destiny. There will be a period of time, if we don't do that, where we won't make those decisions anymore. It will be forced upon us by the people who own our debt. And what the responsible thing is to eliminate the duplication and work in a bipartisan manner to solve the problems over the long run in a way that protects the safety net, but makes the government efficient and effective. I would tell you that I don't think there's one agency of the federal government that is both efficient and effective. Our military and defense department's highly effective, but highly inefficient. There are some that are efficient that are not effective, but there are none that I can find that are both effective and efficient.
This viewer, Pete, an independent in Virginia, wonders if that includes farm subsidies in the agriculture
Absolutely.
department.
I mean, look, farm prices are at the highest level we've seen in our country ever. We have more employees in the Department of Agriculture. Most of them don't work on agriculture. We have programs, duplicative programs. Farming has become so efficient in this country that we almost have more bureaucrats than we have farmers.
Let me go back to the Gang of Six real fast and ask about the ability of you guys to come to an agreement. Would you give it a 50-50 shot?
I can't rate it. I can't tell you. We're, half of this is technical and how we get there and how we plan, and the other half is how do you give up something you know is going to hit you politically, but still do the right thing for the country. So I don't know, because it depends on each individual that's in the room.
Another email from a viewer, Jean Winkler. You sit on the Finance Committee. She asks about corporate profits are the highest ever recorded. IRS's 2010 pie chart for FY 2009 shows corporate share of tax revenue at 4%. The pie chart for FY 2008 shows corporate's share of tax revenue at 10%. This is a reduction in just 1 year of 60%. Comment, we don't have a spending problem. We have a problem of unabashed greed and a government that sustains and protects it.
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to look at effective corporate tax rates, and I think that's true for the large corporations. But for where the jobs are created in this country, the small and medium-sized companies, they're paying much higher tax rates than the large corporations. And that's the problem with our tax code. That's why we want to reform it. That's why we want to take the tax expenditures out. There's $1.3 trillion a year in tax expenditures in the tax code. Which the problem with that is
we're talking about, for those people who don't know, mortgage interest deductions.
Well,
and
mortgage,
things like that.
and that's a big one. But charitable contributions or all these things that outside of those for individuals, but I'm talking about for corporations that make them put capital in a certain degree in a certain area so they can capture a tax credit or a tax payment. We're directing from the federal government capital investment. And what we want directed is we want the markets to determine where the capital investment goes, because that's where we'll get the most jobs and that's where the most efficient use of the capital will go. So as you bring those tax expenditures down and you make our corporate tax rates competitive with the rest of the world, what you're going to see. There's no question one of the rebounding corporate profits is because we've had tremendous productivity gains the last 2 years in this country. In other words, efficiency. What corporations are doing is a whole lot more with less. And so that's a pie chart based on what the estimate is. We'll see what it's going to be. But we've got all these ways for them to hide money somewhere or credit. The fact is really what America needs is a flat tax rate that everybody pays, and there's no deductions for anything, and everybody knows what they're going to pay, and you can actually plan, and then we won't be sending money in the wrong direction that won't benefit the country.
We'll go to Fred, a Democrat in Huntsville, Alabama. Thanks for waiting, Fred.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for Washington Journal C-SPAN. Senator, you're one of the 3 or 4 Republicans that I like and respect. So I'm not trying to stroke your ego, but I just want you to know that. It's probably
well, thank you.
It's probably because you're not a lawyer, but a doctor. But let me say this. My concern is that you guys don't try to rebuild a house that's burned down in a day or 2 or a week. That you guys are trying to do so much with cutting the debt that you might cut too much. And the second thing I wanted to talk about was that you Republicans, if you guys play your cards right, there'll be a Republican in the White House in 2013, because I'm fed up with the Democrats and this Obama administration. They've done nothing but cost me money ever since they've been in office. My interest rates on my credit cards went up. I've been passed over 2 times for a cost of living adjustment because of some CPI or whatever it is. And now I just found out I'm getting another tax increase this month. So if you guys play your cards right, there'll be a Republican in the White House in 2013.
Fred, are you referring to Social Security adjustment?
I'm retired military.
So you've been passed over for a COLA adjustment twice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. 2
All
years in a row.
All right, Senator.
Well, right now, I would just say, first of all, I understand what he's saying. We ought to be thinking about how do we, to me, I can't stand the fact that we're already talking presidential politics, because it takes our eye off the ball. Our problems are so great. It shouldn't matter whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Let me tell you something. Democrat kids and Republican kids are all going to suffer if we don't fix this. It doesn't matter who you are or what your political affiliation or your political philosophy is. If we don't come together and create opportunity-based for the future, we're all going to. I used to say on the Senate floor when I first got to the Senate in 2005 about my children and my grandchildren. It's not going to be my children. It's going to be me. It's going to be you, Greta. It's not. We're not just going to harm the next 2 generations. We're going to actually undercut ourselves and our ability to have a great retirement or the potential for a great retirement. So, what needs to happen is we need to get the federal government back under control, which it's not. That report proves it's not. It's not under control, and it's the Congress's fault. We've not done the oversight. And that doesn't mean our intentions aren't good and everything else, but we've not done the hard work, because it's easy to pass a bill. It's hard to do the oversight to see if it's working. And we have set our country up for failure if we don't come together and solve some of these problems in the very near term. And I may be more of an alarmist than many on it, but I'll tell you what, I think we could easily see a 15 to 20% decline in GDP, 20 to 25% real unemployment, and 20% inflation in the next 3 years if we don't solve these problems.
All right. At the chance of irritating you, because I know you can't stand it, but here's the headline in USA Today. Gingrich to explore 2012 GOP run. What are your thoughts on the former speaker and running?
He is undoubtedly the smartest man I've ever met. He is a thinker. He has great vision. The question to me is, does he have the capability to lead the country? And having served under him in the House, he's probably not one that I would choose to support in a presidential primary.
Because you don't think he has the capability?
No,
to run
it just
the country?
it just to me, you know, we need somebody that's soft and wide-eyed, open, and is stable and learned, and is going to consistently bring us together rather than alienate us. You know, what we need is...
Did you say soft at the beginning?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we need somebody whose eye is critical, but is not harsh in their manner. And I don't mean to say he's necessarily harsh, but I'm looking for a leader that can bring us together. I'm just, you know, it's too early. First of all, I don't like the presidential politics. If we spend any time on that, we're hurting what we're trying to do. And I wish we had a law that you couldn't run for president until 6 months before the presidential